Zion Harper stood at the imposing gates of Westbrook University, clutching his acceptance letter so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The morning sun glinted off the bronze plaques that boasted of the institution's 150-year legacy of excellence and opportunity. Rain clouds gathered overhead, casting long shadows across the pristine campus grounds. "ID and registration, please," demanded the security guard, Raymond Fuller, without looking up from his logbook. His voice carried the disinterested tone of someone who had repeated the same phrase thousands of times. "Good morning, sir. I'm a new student. Here's my acceptance letter and ID," Zion replied, his voice steady despite the nervous flutter in his chest. This moment represented everything he had worked for: valedictorian at his high school, countless late nights studying, 3 jobs to save for tuition. Fuller glanced at the documents, then at Zion's face. His expression shifted. "Systems showing an issue with your registration. You'll need to come back later. But classes start today." "My schedule," Zion began. "Next," Fuller called out, waving to the white student behind Zion. Zion stepped aside, watching the gates swing open for others while remaining firmly closed to him. He noticed something in Fuller's eyes. Not simple bureaucratic indifference, but something colder, more deliberate. Something he had seen before. Zion Harper stood at the imposing gates of Westbrook University, clutching his acceptance letter so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The morning sun glinted off the bronze plaques that boasted of the institution's 150-year legacy of excellence and opportunity. Rain clouds gathered overhead, casting long shadows across the pristine campus grounds. "ID and registration, please," demanded the security guard, Raymond Fuller, without looking up from his logbook. His voice carried the disinterested tone of someone who had repeated the same phrase thousands of times. "Good morning, sir. I'm a new student. Here's my acceptance letter and ID," Zion replied, his voice steady despite the nervous flutter in his chest. This moment represented everything he had worked for: valedictorian at his high school, countless late nights studying, 3 jobs to save for tuition. Fuller glanced at the documents, then at Zion's face. His expression shifted. "Systems showing an issue with your registration. You'll need to come back later. But classes start today. My schedule," Zion began. "Next," Fuller called out, waving to the white student behind Zion. Zion stepped aside, watching the gates swing open for others while remaining firmly closed to him. He noticed something in Fuller's eyes. Not simple bureaucratic indifference, but something colder, more deliberate. Something he had seen before. That night, Zion paced his small rented room, hands trembling with a cocktail of emotions. Rage, humiliation, and exhaustion battled within him. His reflection in the window stared back, raindrops streaming down the glass like tears he refused to shed. "Maybe I should transfer," he whispered to himself. "Find somewhere I'm actually welcome." His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory: "When they build walls, baby, you don't turn around. You find tools to climb over, tunnel under, or break through." Zion's gaze fell on his laptop, where his acceptance letter sat open in one tab. Next to it, his phone displayed texts from his mother: "So proud of you, baby. First in our family at a top university." His breathing slowed as determination crystallized within him. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every student who might come after him, facing the same invisible barriers. "No," he said firmly to the empty room. "I earned my place here." Zion opened a new document on his laptop and began typing methodically. Time, date, name, location, incident details. He would document everything. Record conversations if necessary. Gather witnesses. Build his case. "They want me to disappear," he said, fingers flying across the keyboard. "But I'm about to become more visible than they ever bargained for." Zion's first ally came unexpectedly. Maya Rodriguez, a journalism major who witnessed his 3rd rejection at the gate, approached him at the public library where he'd been forced to study. "I saw what happened," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "And you're not the only one. I've been tracking similar incidents for the student paper." Together, they devised a strategy. Maya introduced Zion to Professor Dominic Wells, a tenured black faculty member in the sociology department who had been quietly collecting discrimination complaints for years. "The administration buries these cases individually," Professor Wells explained in his book-lined office, voice low but intense. "But together, they tell a damning story." Zion installed a recording app on his phone before his next attempt to enter campus. The resulting audio captured Fuller explicitly suggesting he try a community college instead. Through Maya, Zion met Aisha Johnson, the only black student in the Student Government Association, who provided access to enrollment demographics showing a suspicious decline in black student admissions despite increasing applications. "Look at this," Aisha pointed to a spreadsheet. Acceptance rates for black applicants dropped 30% after the new security director was hired. Kevin Park, a law student who overheard their conversation in the campus cafe, offered legal perspective. "This is textbook disparate treatment discrimination," he explained, sketching a timeline of events on a napkin. "The university is violating its own non-discrimination policy, federal education statutes, and possibly civil rights laws." Within a week, Zion had assembled a formidable team and a digital folder bulging with evidence, recordings, testimonials, statistical analyses, and policy violations. Chancellor Patricia Reynolds' office exuded power. Mahogany panels, oil paintings of previous chancellors, all white men, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the campus quad. Her smile remained fixed as Zion, Professor Wells, Maya, and Aisha seated themselves across her expansive desk. "We appreciate your concerns," Chancellor Reynolds began, her voice honeyed with practiced diplomacy. "But these appear to be isolated incidents with reasonable explanations." Zion placed his phone on the desk and pressed play. Fuller's voice filled the room. "We don't need your kind changing the culture here." Reynolds' smile faltered. "We have 17 similar recordings," Zion stated calmly. "Plus enrollment data showing statistical discrimination." Dean Victor Hargrove, a stern man with wire-rimmed glasses, interjected. "These are serious allegations that could damage Westbrook's reputation. Perhaps we could discuss a private resolution." "You mean a settlement with a confidentiality clause," Professor Wells replied. "That would solve Zion's problem but leave the systemic issues intact." "We're not here to negotiate my individual case," Zion leaned forward. "I want policy changes. Accountability. Training. And immediate unrestricted access to the education I was promised." Chancellor Reynolds' eyes narrowed. "Mr. Harper, you're a first-year student making demands of a 150-year-old institution. Consider carefully before proceeding with accusations." "They're not accusations," Maya countered. "They're documented facts. Ready for publication." The campus erupted the morning Maya's exposé hit the student newspaper's website. By noon, 3 major news networks had picked up the story. By evening, #Westbrook Discrimination was trending nationally. "Westbrook University systematically denied campus access to qualified black students," read the headline, accompanied by Zion's photo and damning audio clips. Students gathered on the quad in growing numbers. Signs bearing slogans like "Education is a right" and "Dismantle racist barriers" bobbed above the crowd. White students, black students, and allies of all backgrounds linked arms around the administration building. President Lawrence Davis, summoned from a fundraising trip, faced a barrage of reporters outside his office. "We take these allegations very seriously," he stammered, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool autumn air. "An investigation is underway." A reporter thrust her microphone forward. "The evidence is already public, President Davis. Will you acknowledge the discriminatory practices documented in these recordings?" Social media amplified the scandal. Alumni threatened to withhold donations. Partner universities issued statements of concern. The Board of Trustees called an emergency meeting. In his off-campus housing, Zion watched the live stream of the protests, his phone buzzing constantly with support messages and interview requests. Professor Wells called with news that 3 more students had come forward with similar experiences. "It's breaking open," the professor said. "The dam has finally broken." 3 weeks of upheaval transformed Westbrook University. The Board of Trustees, facing donor pressure and legal liability, took decisive action. Security Director James Whitley and guards Fuller and Wilkes were terminated. Chancellor Reynolds announced her early retirement. President Davis issued a public apology on the same steps where Zion had first been turned away. Zion, now the reluctant face of institutional change, stood before an overflowing auditorium as the new Diversity and Inclusion Office was inaugurated. His voice resonated through the sound system with unwavering conviction. "This victory isn't about punishment. It's about transformation. About building a university that truly lives its professed values." The new policies were far-reaching. Comprehensive anti-bias training for all staff. An independent review board for discrimination complaints. Recruitment initiatives targeting underrepresented communities. And most symbolically, the removal of ID checkpoints at campus entrances, replaced with an open campus policy. Professor Wells was appointed to lead the diversity task force. Aisha became the first black student to chair the student government in 30 years. On a bright Monday morning, Zion walked unimpeded through Westbrook's main gates, backpack slung over his shoulder. Students nodded in recognition. A few offered fist bumps or words of thanks. Near the science building, he paused at a newly installed plaque that read, "Education flourishes only when barriers fall. Justice prevails when courage rises." "First day of real classes," Maya commented, falling into step beside him. Zion smiled. "No. First day of a new Westbrook."